Hey there, readers, writers, and friends. Story Serpent here, and today we're talking about The Bellwoods Game by Celia Crampion. It is a middle grade mystery thriller, highly illustrated novel, which, based on the fact that there isn't an illustrator listed, I'm pretty sure Celia did the illustrations herself as well. She also gets the credit for the cover design, which I think lends credence to the idea that she did these illustrations herself. It was published in 2023, September, I believe, but it came out in paperback in October of 2024 and was immediately one of Barnes & Noble's youth picks for the month, thinking that they were going to have this mysterious thriller, spooky season book to entice young readers this year. The thing is, when Barnes & Noble pushes a paperback, it usually means they ordered too many and they are trying desperately to get rid of them, despite the fact that the hardback didn't generate a whole lot of sales. It was published by Athenaeum Books for young readers, which is, of course, a Simon & Schuster imprint. But before we get into all that, today's random words are like, share, subscribe, phantasm. So, what does this book have to say about itself? Obviously, I went and got the hardback from the library because I wasn't going to spend money on something Barnes & Noble was pushing like that. But let's see what the book has to say for itself. Everyone knows Fall Hollow is haunted. It has been ever since Abigail Snook went into the woods many years ago, never to be seen again. Since then, it's tradition for the 6th graders at Beckett Elementary to play the Bellwoods game, in which 3 kids are chosen to go into the woods on Halloween night. Whoever rings the bell there wins the game and saves the town for another year. But if Abigail's ghost captures all the players first, the spirit is let loose to wreak havoc on Fall Hollow. Or so the story goes. Now that it's Bailey's year to play, she can finally find out what really happens. And legend has it, the game's winner gets a wish. Maybe, just maybe, if Bailey wins, she can go back to the way things used to be before her grandma got sick and everyone at school started hating her. But is Abigail's ghost really haunting the Bellwoods? One thing's for sure, something sinister is at play, waiting for them all in the woods. So, before we dive in, let me just say, spoilers will abound here. I feel like this book has already been out for a year, so if you didn't know, you do now. Warning, spoilers are afoot. And part of the reason for that is that the blurb is lying to you. Since Abigail Snook went into the woods, the game has been played, the blurb tells you. This turns out not to be true. The game has been played long before Abigail Snook. But this gets into the problems with the world building. First of all, let's see the book itself. So, as you can see, we have this not to scale, barely useful map, which you all know how I feel about a useless map in the beginning of a book. I didn't reference it at all while I was reading. I came back to it afterwards to find out that, yes, indeed, the things they are saying half the time don't make sense. So, if the game starts in the cemetery and goes through the woodsiest part of the woods, then to this break in this ridge where most of the actual woods seem to be on top of this ridge here, but there's a cut, and the path only seems to go there. There are complaints at the beginning of the book that the cut is a secret that most people in town don't know about. Well, if the path leads right to it, and these woods don't seem big enough for much more, again, not to scale, obviously, and therefore unhelpful, I have a feeling way more people know about this cut through the ridge. Also, if this path through the woods does not exit the woods to the rest of town here, what is the point of it at all? It's essentially a dead end, or it forces you to go through the ridge, over the river, up the ridge, which is apparently not as steep as this thing in the book looks, because that looks like you would have to be climbing a ladder to get to the top of this thing, unless you're coming this way. Speaking of which, if I'm a player of the Bellwoods game, and I start in the cemetery, I'm not going this way. I'm going over the bridge, back behind the elementary, over to the climb up the ridge, across the ridge, across the bridge to the bell. Because all of this seems like a terrible idea and not a good time. So I don't understand why they're playing it this way. Moreover, there is a scene where they're almost to the bell. They can practically touch it. They're right there. And yet they get backed off the ridge over the waterfall. I don't see how that can physically happen. I understand how they go off the bridge and over the waterfall. That does also happen. But there's this moment here where it's like, I'm backed up against the ridge, against the cliff. Like, really? Shouldn't... I mean, again, this map is not to scale and therefore functionally useless in terms of helping you navigate the book. So if your kid is confused about where everyone is and what's happening, that's fine. Everyone should be. This wasn't done well in terms of helping you understand where you are. As far as the pictures go, they're not terrible. They're also not great. And I don't know that they actually serve the story very well. When you're writing horror, when you're writing a mystery, it even says this in the book. The book says this. What is most frightening is the unknown, is the uncertainty. Yes, seeing some things, very scary. That is a scary freaking thing I am looking at. I am running the other way. We have certain instincts against those things like snakes and spiders. We, poison, bad, go this way, obviously. But for the most part, the things human beings are most afraid of are things that are unknown, the things we cannot see, the things that lurk in the dark and pose danger we don't understand and therefore can't respond properly to. So if you're showing me every other scary thing that's going down, for example, big scary wolf. She's so scared. She's on the ground. It's so big and scary. And is it just me, or does this look like a Saturday morning cartoon? I don't care if you're 10 years old. This isn't going to freak you out. So I don't know if she's trying to water down the fear and the intensity of the book to make it more palatable to scaredy pants readers, or if she just doesn't understand that she's watering down the scares that are available to her in this book. Moreover, because the illustrations aren't always great, I don't know that they're serving a lot of purpose. They're not helpful. They're just taking up a lot of space, which I frankly find astonishing given the cost of paper. I don't know who greenlit this book. I don't know how Celia got them to agree to all of those illustrations, because at my estimate, it's over 40 pages worth of space that are dedicated to the illustrations that I don't think are helping, that aren't, in terms of quality, they're fine. They are perfectly well executed illustrations. I am not bagging on Celia's ability as an artist at all. I'm just saying, Celia, you may be an artist, but we didn't have to have the pictures in this dang book. It could have been a much faster read, which this book wants you to think it's 300 pages worth of book. It's not. It's 260, maybe. Maybe even less than that. Which means the type of story she's trying to tell, which is complicated, has multiple twists, has upwards of 5 main-ish characters. It's a single person point of view. We are in Bailey's head the whole time, but she's in the woods with this other cast of characters. It's definitely a group effort, this whole book. And so when you've got that many characters playing a major role, you need more words, less pictures, because the pictures never do anything the words aren't doing. As you can tell, I was frustrated. This book also took me quite a while to finish. Part of the reason it took me so dang long to get through it beginning to end is because there is, I think, a fundamental misbelief of the difference between making something atmospheric and interesting and really getting people into the world building and just slowing the book down. The prose was fine. It was perfectly well executed. No misses, no typos, nothing. I think there was one. I caught one, but, normal. The pacing was just so off. Every time I was like, okay, the story's going, we're going, let's move the action along, let's do the thing, she would slow it down with this huge paragraph or two of description, trying to get you back into the mood of the forest. Remember the forest we're already in that you have already described 3 different times to us? Okay, we gotta do that all over again. She also does not seem to understand how long her book takes beginning to end, because it's supposed to start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which in October, the sun's already kissing the horizon. It's thinking about it for sure, which means sunset happens in full by 6 p.m. The woods will be darkish at 4 and in full black by 6. I've got no clue how long this story takes. To me, it felt like forever. It felt like the sun was setting forever. For several chapters, at least, the sun is setting, it's getting darker, it's gonna be dark, we don't know what to do in the dark. We get it. So if you hand this book to a child, and they put it down approximately a third of the way through the book and DNR this sucker, I'm with them 100%. I forced myself to finish it for you so that I could tell you that the twist in the end is not that twisty. And it ends up being not that scary really at all. And they try to make you sympathize with the villain. The morality in this story is upside down and bonkers. Moreover, the conflicts between most of the characters, and I have said this 11 billion times, I don't care if it's YA, I don't care if it's adult, I don't care if it's meant for a 9-year-old. If the problem to be solved can be solved by 2 people sitting down and having a conversation that should have already happened, you don't have conflict. You don't have a story. It would make way more sense. Well, remember in the blurb, it told us that everyone hates Bailey at school, including one of her best friends, Fen. He was going to go do some crazy dare on a log over the river, and he believes that Bailey's the one who ratted him out, and everybody got, recess detention, because apparently their school doesn't have a fence around it. It just backs up into the woods, and everyone's fine with that. I don't know a single school in my neck of the woods, in any neck of the woods, that is not fenced at this point in history. So that's a bit of nonsense, number one. Why would any school situate itself so that kids can walk off campus at any point during recess, let alone a whole grade level's worth of kids, and no one's gonna know about it? So the setup is nonsense in order to have Fen be mad at Bailey because he thinks she's the one who told about the dare. It would make way more sense for Fen and Bailey both to have really compelling reasons to win the wish. And as the lead up to the game unfolds in the first couple of chapters, we see them fighting with each other over, but I need this wish more. No, I need this wish more. Well, we're just going to have to be antagonists in this thing, right? When they decide that they are in conflict over the end result of the game, it would make the tension much more compelling, and it would make more sense. I don't care if you have an interesting idea for a thing. You have to make it make sense. So that's one conflict that made no sense to me at all. Over the course of this book, they try to make characters feel bad for not choosing to hang out with someone who's kind of a know-it-all and also doesn't reach out socially to anyone else. That's on her. That's not on everybody else. No one else is obligated to like you. No one else is obligated to hang out with you. We are not mandated to spend time with certain people. I don't see how you work around that, and I don't see why you should be advocating that to children. As far as characters go, Bailey's fine, Fenn's crazy, Noah is a little bit insufferable and is a victim of a stupid adult. Real dumb adult in his previous life before he became the new kid allowed him to publish a bunch of stuff about the founder of their school, painting him as a bad dude, without bracing this kid's family, the principal, for impact. Anyone who understands journalism, even a little tiny bit, knows that if you publish something others might find inflammatory, you need to prepare yourself for the blowback. And the fact that this student-run paper, this teacher, cleared the article for publication, didn't tell the principal ahead of time, didn't tell the parents ahead of time, did not explain to the kid, okay, you have come across some really interesting information, and if it's true, people should know about it. You are 100% right about that. People aren't going to like this. They're going to be upset. You are taking someone they saw as a laudable individual. You are humanizing them in a very negative way. They're not going to like it. There will be blowback. And then you have a conversation with the kid and the parents about whether or not that's blowback they actually want to deal with. You clear it with the school before that thing goes to print, and this poor kid ends up on the receiving end of every one of that school named for person's descendants come for them. It's nonsense. It's bad adulting. It's bad journalism. It's just dumb. We do have, in addition to all this other shenanigans, a they-them character. This they-them character was the winner of the previous year's Bellwoods game. And there's a number of times where their pronouns become confusing because they were standing in a group of 3 people. Are we still talking about Arlo? Are we talking about the rest of the group? I don't know. I don't understand why children's book authors feel the need to include this weird pronoun nonsense because it just makes your book more confusing. It's very, very difficult to use they-them pronouns because they're plural. They mean more than one person. And as a result, if you're trying to make a pronoun for plurals mean a singular, it's gonna get confusing one way or the other. It wasn't super pushy. It didn't go into a lot of detail. Arlo is present kind of at the beginning of the game and at the end of the game, and referenced a couple of times along the way, thinking, oh, Arlo must have known this. Arlo must have seen that this was what was happening. It's not great. I don't love it. It seemed superfluous to me, really. Like I said, in terms of the general morality, I don't understand why we have to sympathize with an entity that feeds off fear and is terrorizing people. I don't care why they're doing it. They're doing it. There should be zero sympathy with an entity that feeds off fear and destroys people. That's bad. And there's no reason to sympathize with why they're doing it. It's bad. They should stop doing it. Moreover, I feel like Celia was giving herself the opportunity for a sequel because the phantasm that haunts the forest isn't really gone by the end. And the end seemed a little contrived, if I'm 100% honest, just because There's no reason for this spirit to let the game go on. The spirit is way too powerful. It just is. The thing haunting the Bellwoods is way more powerful than these kids are, and there is no reason whatsoever for any of them to win. There's no reason for the creature to let them get anywhere near the bell. It certainly didn't have to. So the fact that this creature that you've made out to be this big thing that feeds on fear and feeds on stories and wants to steal, your memory, it wants to steal these fear stories from you so it can then become more powerful. You've set these kids up again in opposition to a creature they can't really defeat. And the defeat that comes later on, it doesn't make sense. It comes out of nowhere. It's not hinted at anywhere before the story. It's very Deus Ex Shadow. If you've read the book, you know. And it just felt a bit ridiculous to me overall. Moreover, it makes it so that the climax of the book is actually kind of boring. By the time we get there, it's like, okay, we know they win. Just get it over with. Because the pacing is so wrong. Overall, the story Serpent wants to give it an Insidious, but it's not well enough executed for that. It's almost a dumpster drop. The only thing that makes me think maybe I can't give it that is the illustrations. Kids are going to get drawn in by the illustrations, by the cover, it's engaging artwork, and they're going to go through it and be subjected to really stupid circumstances that don't make sense in a world that is poorly constructed with characters that are not great humans and being fed a bunch of morality they really shouldn't be. So we're going to call it an Insidious for that reason. But I'm also not 100% sure that the pacing and the writing quite justifies that. Make of that what you will. Anyway, that's all I have for today. It was a lot, I know. But if you've got a book you want to see the Story Serpent take on, feel free to put it down in the comments. And until next time, read on, write on, and stay sharp.